Hello, everybody, and welcome to our next In Conversation With. I'm delighted to be joined today by Elizabeth McDonnell, and Elizabeth is part of our Assessment Solutions team, an Assessment Solutions Officer for NCFE, and is here to talk to us today about a role that she had previously to join in NCFE as a Deputy SENDCO in a secondary school. So welcome, Elizabeth, and thank you so much for your time. I have a few questions, and we'll just run through these if we may. So first of all, this is a massive undertaking working with children and young people with SEND. So could you describe your role and responsibilities as Deputy SENDCO?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was one of two deputy SENCOs in a secondary school in Sunderland. There were around 750 students in the school, mostly coming from the surrounding area, which was quite, a difficult in some parts area. We have over 50% of free school meals, and over 30% of the students were on the SEN register. So around about 30, obviously.
Wow.
It kind of differs each year, so it's quite a lot. Those are the students who, with a need, who are on the register. We obviously provide support as well as students who have a need who aren't necessarily on the register. So they would also be included in a lot of the things that we would do. So I was one of two deputy SENCOs. They kind of mirrored the setup of so we had a head teacher and two deputy heads. So we had the SENCO and then two deputy SENCOs. We each had a different role. So the other deputy SENCO dealt with the curriculum and I dealt with all the pastoral side. So I would deal with sort of students on a daily basis. I would deal with outside agencies. I would send referrals, make appointments, all those kind of things, deal with incoming letters from those. I would deal quite a lot with the heads of year, the pastoral side, making sure that what we're putting in place is working, because the heads of year obviously work really closely with the students as well. So we would work just to make sure that those strategies and plans that we'd put in place were actually being carried out on a day-to-day basis, and we're having some benefit. Because with the best will in the world, you can put all of these plans in place, and for some students it just doesn't actually work, and we need to go back to the drawing board.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So there's a lot, an awful lot that happens when you're working with children and young people with SEN. So that's just a little hint, I think, the tip of the iceberg that you've shared with us. So thank you. So if you were reflecting on the work that you did, can you pick up any or pick out any sort of specific challenges that you had in your day-to-day work? And of course, let's celebrate any highlights as well. Yeah. So the good bits.
I would say the biggest challenge about my role was time, because as Deputy SENCO, I was given 3 lessons a fortnight out of the classroom to do my Deputy SENCO role. Wow. The rest of the time I was teaching, which goes with everything else that comes with being a teacher.
Yeah.
So I would say the biggest problem was time, because a lot of these things that you deal with are very time sensitive. So you can't say, oh, well, I'm not free again until Thursday. It needs to be dealt with straight away. And that, I think that was the biggest problem, making sure that things were done in time, to make sure that we weren't holding up referrals, we weren't sort of keeping things from students that they needed to have.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I can understand that. So time is the biggest barrier, isn't it, for everything? Because everything's moving so fast, and you're trying to do what you need to do and what's right, and yet there's you've had that wider remit of the teacher as well, and this was an additional role. So difficult. Any good bits?
Oh, absolutely. I loved my job. I loved being Deputy SENCO. I loved working in SEN. I loved being able to build those relationships with those students who maybe found school really difficult, and you became the person who they would confide in. You were the constant in their life at school. You were the person who would come knocking on your door because they just wanted to chat. And that was by far the best thing. And then seeing them succeed because of things that you've managed to put in place, there's not a job like it in the world. There really isn't.
You just lit up when you were talking about that.
I did.
I can feel the passion and the commitment. And so despite those challenges and the demands of the job and the wider job, I guess, of teaching and the responsibilities that go with that, making a difference for individual children. It's a privilege, isn't it, to be able to have that rapport. And it also is the thing that makes you smile. Those are the good bits,
Absolutely.
aren't they, of
It
teaching?
really is. It's the best bit.
Yeah, fantastic. So people who are listening to this recording, I guess, will be concerned about, well, what do they do? So if they're working as teaching assistants, early years educators, volunteers, students, what sort of advice would you give to anyone who was concerned about a child or young person? So not necessarily from a safeguarding point of view, but from a SEND point of view. What advice would you give them?
There will always be someone that you can speak to. There will always be a Senko. There will always be a deputy Senko. There will always be a teacher around, a class teacher. Speak to them, tell them. Because if they don't know, they can't do anything about it. And with the best will in the world, I did not know every student on the SEM register because there were so many of them. You
Yeah,
can't know all of them really well, and
yeah,
you just need to tell someone. And I would have preferred someone to tell me and then me say, oh, well, actually, it's okay. We're already dealing with it. Or, oh, okay, we'll have a look at it, rather than them just keep quiet and we never know.
yeah. No, I think that's absolutely sound advice, and it leads very nicely, really, to the final question, and that's really around the demands of your role, because you've talked about the challenges. We've talked a little bit about the highlights and things, but it is a very demanding role, no matter how we dress it up. It's a
Yeah,
demanding role, and so whilst it's rewarding, it can be overwhelming. And people that are listening to this might also feel that from time to time they feel overwhelmed. So what sort of support did you have, or what sort of support would you have liked to have, or you think people should have when they're working with children and young people with SEND?
I think it's really important to have someone in the workplace that you can talk to, whether that's to tell them a problem that you have and you don't know what you should do about it, or just as a bit of a sounding board. Because of the type of role it is, you can't come home and talk about it. You
Yeah,
can't, it's not like, if I have a bad day in the office now, I can complain to my friend. You can't do that. So
yeah,
it's really important that you've got someone in the workplace that you can have as a little sounding board. And we used to
yeah.
have regular SEN meetings, and we would all sit around a table and just talk about it. And I think that really helps because you've got it off your chest, you've told someone else. And I think it really does help. I think it's really important that that's available to everyone working in SEN.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that idea of sort of informal as well as more formal
Yeah,
supervision, to be able to talk about those things and to be able to make sure you're okay, because yeah, it can be quite overwhelming and definitely very challenging. Um, so I suppose where it leads me to another thought. I know that was going to be my last question, but I've just had another thought, and that was thinking about, being on supply. And a lot of people, again, a lot of people listening to this recording might not have that wonderful privileged opportunity of being able to build up that rapport with individual children and young people, because we all know you need to know those children as the best you possibly can before you can recognize what's related to an SEN trigger, what's related to them, and about knowing and tuning into those children as well as you can. So a lot of people might be on bank or supply, and it's difficult to be able to do that. So is there any advice you would give to people in that particular situation?
yeah, I have been there. I did supply. I Before I ended up teaching where I was, I worked as a supply TA for a little while. I worked as an HLTA on supply, and then in the school I was at. All I could say is just try. There will be people in school that you can speak to, even if you're there for a day. There will be
Yeah,
someone that who's around. But if you're there as a TA, the class teacher is there. Please speak to them. I know when I was the class teacher, I would always say, if there's anything that comes up in the day, please let me know. And it's really important that you do that because you don't want to go home with it in your head.
exactly. That's good advice, isn't it? I think that's a really good place for us to stop. So Elizabeth, thank you so much for sharing your sort of story in terms of what it's been like, what the roles and responsibilities are like in practice and in context, and also about the challenges and the rewards, and about remembering what really matters is the fact that every day you're making a positive difference to that child's experience. And if you're in a situation where it's become challenging between the two, then those experiences are not going to be the best they can be. And that's when you just need to talk to other people and make sure that it doesn't grow into something for them or for you. But
Absolutely.
fantastic advice. Thank you so much.
No problem at all. Thank you.